whoever watches
Okay.
the podcast VOD, they'll
Um.
know. They'll know. They'll be they're real OGs.
Stream go boom boom.
And go boom
Uh,
boom.
it
It did.
still shows that we're frozen. What the heck? Uh,
Ah,
we're all moving.
This is my
that
dragon.
plush looks eminently huggable.
It
It's
is.
very
Yes. Oh,
squishy.
okay. I
So
think
one of those squishy
we're
is.
ones
working
from
now.
Costco.
I think we're working. Yes.
So I don't think this one itself is not from Costco, but I do believe they
Hello.
have some of these at Costco. This one is actually from Tom Thumb, and I have another one at home from Target, but it's the Squishmallows. They're very popular right now. They all come with names, and he's a dragon, and his wings are shiny, and his name's Dominic, and
Yes,
he's got a little tail.
Actually, now thinking about it, the whole presentation stuff, I was talking mainly in
Yeah.
it, so it wasn't capturing my audio.
The
Can
stream.
yeah, stream's back. Can anyone confirm that they can hear me?
I said the important things, theoretically, Erasmo.
I mean, yeah.
the, the t-shirts.
Yes, t-shirts is the
Yeah, I
most.
can
Did
hear
you
you
make?
now.
Did
Okay.
you make another stream?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
You can
unfortunately,
send another link.
Yeah.
oh, uh, do you got it, Justin?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, cool. For now, I need to.
Also, we should timestamp our previous stream because we have like 30 minutes of the stream will be starting soon. Yeah, screen. So we should probably write something in the description.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
I got my dragon a few weeks ago, and I got my dragon because I made it through 8 weeks where I did not have a single week that did not have an exam in it. I had 8 weeks of exams.
Oh, so sorry. Why do you
Yeah,
have
it
so
was
many?
just a lot of it was like I had like one exam a week. Like the most I had was two exams in 1 week. But it was just like none of my professors were talking, so I just ended up with like one
Are we
a
frozen
week.
again?
No, we're
So
good.
I bought myself a squishy dragon to make myself feel better and congratulate myself on surviving without failing too hard.
Too hard. There you go.
too
Congratulations.
That's a good
too
point.
hard being the keyword.
But yeah, if we're
Yeah,
gonna go back to internship stuff. You
sure.
guys got y'all through connections. I got mine through Handshake. I had a friend ask me how I got it through Handshake, and like I said, just apply everywhere. I think that's probably the thing we
Yeah,
got.
Handshake is criminally underutilized. It's a tool.
Yeah,
We should use it.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I just get
The
scared when I see that employers looking for a GPA of 3.0 or higher because I don't have that.
Oh,
So I just
I
don't
go
do
for
it.
it anyways. I just send it because
Really?
It can't
Like
hurt you.
if you
I
have
mean,
the
I know
yeah,
it's
the
experience
worst
charging.
is
go
they
for it,
don't look.
and everything else, yeah.
I had to fill out a survey today from a recruiting session that I went to for a specific company, and they asked for my exact GPA, and I went, "Yep, my stuff is probably now going to get thrown out, which sucks, but oh
Mm-hmm.
well."
Yeah.
So do I
That's
lie
just how it be.
if it
I
asks?
mean, look,
Oh.
here's the deal. Is your major GPA higher? Just put that instead.
Man,
I mean, if you have any experience, really, in the
I have
Yeah.
no
workforce,
experience.
Yeah, I
like
think work
you had,
experience ultimately becomes more important in the end
like,
because
Yeah.
like
Well,
even your
that's what I'm
part-time
trying to
I
job
mean,
figure out. Is
was
what
like
if
okay,
I'm gonna
pretty
yes and
pretty low.
no, because okay, like work experience will become more important once you graduate. Okay, so like the first job you get after graduation, like GPA, like the less work experience you have, the more GPA matters, right?
hmm
So like when you're in a sea of candidates of other people who only had zero or no internships, they're still going to be looking at your GPA, right? Now when you're 10 years in the workforce and you worked for two or three different companies, that goes in the front of your education, right? But I'd say it'd be disingenuous to say that GPA matters significantly less than work experience at this stage in our career, like while we're still in college. I think that's false.
yeah,
People will filter their candidates by GPA, which for someone like me is extremely frustrating because I have quite a bit of work experience, but it's not engineering specific. And then also my GPA like isn't the highest, but my GPA doesn't reflect the stuff that I had to go through to make it to where I am in my degree program, and
Mhm.
all of the things I had to deal with. And so for me, that's why taking the opportunities I can get, like becoming the president, are important, because people will see my GPA, but then people also will see that I was the president. Well, the presidency doesn't matter as much as to them as much as like good grades, but you don't end up as the president of an organization out of nothing.
Yep.
Like somebody
Yeah.
somewhere saw something in you. So that's why for me I have to pad my resume elsewhere, is because I don't my GPA isn't the highest, and I don't have a ton of engineering experience.
Mhm.
Yeah, and my advice, if you're worried about your GPA affecting how you're hireable, is get as many opportunities as you can, especially if you are able to interview well, to meet recruiters in person. Because if you can get that foot in the door, then they'll consider you, and they might not throw your application out just because of one aspect of you, right? And like, yeah, like Sarah was saying, like your GPA doesn't reflect your journey, like who you are as a person and where you've been. And that's a flaw of the system, but unfortunately it's the system we're working with, right? So you need to do everything you can to maximize your advantages in this current system, because it's not going to change um, in the foreseeable future, right? You still need to get a job, because you're all going through college. You probably, at least some of us, have college debt, or most of us, let's be real. So
Yep.
gotta get paid, guys, and like
That's true.
you just gotta work with what you got. And yeah, I understand like where you're coming from, because like I don't even have a perfect GPA myself, but I like to think that I interview well. So like, yeah, meet recruiters in person and have good connections, or like network well, and those can be ways to leverage your abilities when on surface your GPA might not look too good.
Wow.
Yeah, Martin's totally right with that. I actually talked with a recruiter today, and not once was my GPA brought up in that conversation, but I was able to give her a little bit of what I've had to personally deal with to get to where I am in my degree program and being close to graduating. And yeah, not once did my GPA come up. Now, like, if the company decides to go forward with me or asks me to apply for jobs, it might come up then. But
Mhm.
talking to people in person, they can find your GPA out later if they're so interested in that.
I honestly want to say that I think companies are actually less interested in your GPA. Like the company itself doesn't really care what you've done in terms of your GPA. I feel like they use it really as a sorting mechanism versus more of a utility thing. Like you will not get like a CEO of a company be like, "What was your GPA again?" I really doubt you get that. You might get it if the person's weird or something like that, but a lot of engineers really don't care about it. All they care about is, do you have the skills that that were promised out of your degree, and can you apply them to real world problems? And do you have other skills that we can use? So that's the way I see it. I really don't know if that is 100% valid, because based on my experience, it is true so far. That one company doesn't really care. They just cared about, can I apply what I know, and can I help them achieve whatever problems they have currently. So
Um,
And how do you
yeah,
show that?
I agree a lot with what Erasmus was saying, but remember, Erasmus, you had the advantage of having your dad as a connection to the
mhm,
company and to help you get that foot in the door, right? It's like I was saying earlier,
yeah,
like to say that engineers like individually care about your GPA, you're absolutely right. Like, your coworkers aren't going to be, when you're an intern, aren't going to be asking like, hey, what was your GPA? They're not going to be asking about that sort of stuff. They're going to be looking at your skills. But that's still, I think it's just to say that companies don't care about your GPA is false, because the company is not the person, right? A company is an individual person in the company. The
mhm.
company is as a whole, and when the company is recruiting, when an HR person is recruiting, they are absolutely going to care about your GPA, and that's just how it is.
But
So on one hand, you are correct, but to say the way you framed your statement, I think implies something that isn't true, and that it's that companies
no,
don't care about your GPA.
well, yeah, and okay, like they do care. But the thing is, like, the company itself doesn't really care. All they use GPA for is a sorting mechanism. Okay, this person got a higher GPA, so therefore should get more priority for us to talk to them. So yes,
Yeah.
it is important in application wise. But
Yeah,
like,
it's
let's
more
just
of an
say,
insight.
like, someone with a 4.0 GPA, really book smart, but has no tangible skills. Like, it will be difficult to train that person into being a great catter or being a great person to talk with other companies about, I don't know, foreign trade or stuff like that. So that's why, as important GPA is, because I will not deny that GPA is absolutely important. It is also important to develop yourself in skills, coding, because a lot of engineering jobs dumbs down to coding. Even if you're like in the weird, like even if you're in the food industry. I was working in the food industry or food production industry, and we still had to do a lot with coding and knowing code and knowing how to read it and stuff like that so that our machines would work properly. So like just widening things that you can do for a company, I feel also really adds to your resume. Is my point in the
Absolutely.
mixed.
Making sure that you have those skills and developing them, super important. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that we unequivocally state that GPA is still important and it is still something that companies are going to be looking at. So you need to just be aware of that. I just wanted to make
Mhm.
sure that was clear.
Yeah, yeah,
And
also,
I believe, Justin, you were saying something in the middle of that. I just want to make sure it gets brought up because
Yeah.
I think you were talked over a little. So I want to
Okay,
make sure
Yeah.
we save.
He was asking
How
how
would
do you show it?
you? Yeah. How do you show that? How do you show this development that you would have gone through besides just your GPA, all that extra stuff that you've done? Because I've never just sat my ass until like now when I lost my job. Like I've always worked. I've
Mhm.
had to take care of myself and pay my rent and my utilities and all this stuff for a long time. I had a couple of jobs at one time, and like I was like busting ass out there, but I don't know how to show somebody like, hey, I know what I'm doing, and on top of that, I'm willing to go through the shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From
So
my experience, I also come from a background like that. I've had two jobs consistently for 4 years of college now, and on top of that, worked every single break. I haven't taken like a vacation ever to start off, but then I've been working almost since I graduated high school. And for me, how I feel that the people is it's obvious on my resume because a lot of my jobs say 2017, January 2017 to present. Like a lot of my jobs end in present because I still work them. And that's the way I've framed my resume. That's very visible on the right side is that those jobs are still present, like current jobs that I'm still at. And then on top of that is when I'm talking to a recruiter, I try to bring up that I have um, never worked at a job for less than minus the two internships I've had for the previous 2 summers. I've never worked at a job less than now 3.5 years,
mhm.
and so
And actually
I
that's
try to
very important.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have the shortest amount of time I ever worked a job was my internships, but anything outside of that, 3.5 years, and that you can kind of see the when you're talking in person and even through a video chat you're able to see like things connect together in their head. So like, yeah, my GPA doesn't look so hot, but if you look at what I did, like where my GPA was the worst, those years I was working about as many hours as I was spending in the classroom. And so obviously that's going to have a toll on your grades. Like you're not spending that time working or you're not spending that time studying in your classes and getting help for your classes. So unless you're just like, oh, I am 100% positive I can do this class with no help, then like it's more than likely going to reflect. So I just try to bring that up when I'm talking to somebody, but it's super hard when all they can see is what you've sent them, which is why job I like job applications where they have like a tell me about yourself blurb because like a section that you can fill out because then I'm like here this is why you want me as your employee rather than somebody else who has a 4.0, but all they did during school was attend class and like get a 4.0 in all their classes.
Mhm.
I bring a lot to the table that is not visible in my grades because there's no classes where I can apply my work skills the same way as I can apply a little bit here to this class, a little bit to this class. And it's just because that's what those classes call for. So communicating in person and then specifically looking for an opportunity to tell a recruiter or a company more about yourself and the background that you have, um, just in the work industry, not even just in the engineering industry.
Another thing that
Yeah,
really
you
helps.
can
Oh, go on, Atlas.
you can drop your resume. You want to keep it like as factual as possible, but you can always put stuff on there that imply that you've been doing stuff while that might explain your lower GPA. But also, I think this is where the cover letter is really important
Mhm.
because your cover letter, you get to explain yourself and like explain why your GPA might not be as ideal and but why you still think you're qualified. Um,
Mhm.
I don't have the same problem as you guys. My GPA is pretty high, but that's because I just moved majors. I was previously a pre med, so they place a heavy emphasis on GPA, which is why I spent all my time like getting 4.0s on like my previous classes. But I also have, because of that switch, I don't have any experience in anything engineering.
Mhm.
So I have a really hard time finding like internships, getting called back for interviews, just because I don't have any experience in engineering. I mean, I had some stuff from like from biochemistry, which was my previous major. Then I have some leadership positions, but it's just still not enough. So this is kind of backtracking a bit. GPA helps, but I definitely would recommend even if you can't get an internship, entering things like Game Jam or like
Hackathons.
whatever mini coding products projects or mini competitions or CADing, just doing outside personal projects to put on your resume will help you, sell yourself
Mhm.
because you just have to
I
do what
found,
you can.
yeah, I found great benefit from going out and like learning some odd things. Like I employers a lot of time they might be like, "Oh, are you experienced with like Excel?" And typically everybody's like, "Yeah, I've used Excel." Well, I know how to do like equations in Excel. Like I've gone out and I've watched videos and I've learned how to further myself in quite a few Microsoft Office products,
Yep.
which is very applicable to any job. And for me personally, the internship I worked at the past 2 summers, it was the same internship with the same company. It was actually a gym, but it was an administrative assistant internship. And basically, all I did for, well, 4.5 days a week was work on spreadsheets and membership and calculations and stuff like that. And because like that helped me with my skills in office. And so now I can actually say yes, like wholeheartedly with my heart, with my whole chest, I can say yes, I am proficient in Word, in Excel, in PowerPoint. Like I can do that for you. And that's available for a dozen other programs. If you know C++, go out, try to like learn C since they're pretty close, and then you can branch off and you can learn
Python.
um, R,
Python.
which
Mm,
a lot of people are not familiar with
I
R,
like
but yeah,
R.
Python as well.
I mean, another way, something that I like to do, since like, especially since I'm building competitions and workshops, and I participated in Human Powered Vehicle, and I like projects. Like projects is one of my favorite things, and I'm kind of sad whenever a class doesn't have like a good project, because like some class projects are really boring, especially depending on your teammates and stuff like that. But one thing I really like to do is like build a portfolio, build something that like if you need to show to a employer, hey, look, my skills. Just send them a link to a portfolio website or get yourself certifications that say, hey, this person actually knows this skill. Like I've taken the LinkedIn quizzes for Autodesk, Inventor, SolidWorks, Excel, C++, and I've passed all of them. I had to take the C++ one twice, but having that little star by that skill really helps out because they say, look, he's passed a test that says he actually knows what he's doing. I've also gone further in Excel by programming macros and just using it in weird projects. One of the hardest things about building a portfolio, though, I will say, is finding projects to do. So joining little competitions that I design or that someone designs in this organization, other organizations, or stuff like that really helps because it gives you at least something to work on to show these skills that you guys have. And then putting them on your resume is a great conversation starter. What was this game jam you did, or what was this CAD speed CAD competition you did?
Right.
So all that kind of stuff only builds to your resume. So
Yeah, that was a big part of the interviewing process. They were interested in all the projects I did. It's like human powered vehicle. They were super interested, and they want you to be able to explain everything you did. So not just having it on your resume is going to help. Being able to explain things you did, how you helped, explain the background of the whole human powered vehicle, how things went about, how you communicated with the team. Small things add up, and that really shows. And the recruiters themselves are very interested in things you do. It's like for me, I won in a hackathon, and they were super interested in that. I was like, okay, tell us more about your hackathon. And as long as you can explain really well what you did for your project, that's all they care about for projects. It shows you are involved into things. You show involvement into things as well. So like UTD ASME, I'm your events coordinator now. We used to be in the me and Ross, we used to participate with the Alice as well, the human powered vehicle competition up until COVID.
yeah,
And that was gonna be super exciting. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, they were super interested in all of the projects, which I think is probably personally, I think that's probably the reason they chose me as an intern, just because I was so involved in school in different clubs. I worked part-time jobs as well.
yep.
My GPA wasn't. It's not bad. It's like a 3.1, and they're like, cool. But they didn't talk anything about GPA. That's mostly probably just HR, like Gerasman said, just trying to filter people around.
Mhm.
But yeah, projects and also putting pop words into your resume. So things like competed in competition, won a competition, Excel, skills in general, and
Mhm.
it also depends on your availability because I know a lot of the people they probably push away because they don't want to work during the week, like 30 hours a week, which is like dude, come on,
Yeah.
you want an internship but you're not willing to work 30 hours a week during your school semester. Well, I guess at that point it'd be a co-op, but yeah, co-op slash internship type deal,
One
and
thing I
then
will
showing
also.
commitment
Oh, sorry.
as
One
well,
thing.
and then showing commitment. Might be yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
good.
one thing I will say is, whenever you put a skill on your resume, you got to make sure you actually know the skill because if your like employer says, "Hey, I need you to do this for me, stat," and your resume said knows Excel, and all you know how to do with Excel is organize things and make graphs, but you don't know how to use like the auto sort or the autofill features or like some basic features, it will look interesting on you and you do not have time to learn things. Like do not go into an internship like having to know like okay, I need to learn this whole new program uh although I had said that I'd known the basics of it, because those engineering companies want to use you, and the more they're able to use you, the more you're able to use that internship into your thing. So like in my internship, I had to learn Excel VBA, which was horrific. It is. If anyone's programmed with it, I think they will understand when I say that is probably the worst programming language I've ever used because it's weird. It's a lot more English than programming, and the way you have to set up things is very strange. But I had to learn that as quickly as possible because they were expecting me to make them a project builder out of nothing. They're just like, hey, here's some like weak parameters that we were expecting from you. Now build this thing for us. And I'm just like, okay. And I had to run with it as much as I could. So knowing your skills solidly and being a quick adapter is another really great little cherry on top. So
Also, a lot of people consider internships jobs. I consider it more as a learning environment. I
mhm,
mean, but you're getting paid to learn, really. And
yeah,
yeah, that's been. I think that's how I would describe an internship.
yeah,
Yeah, an internship absolutely is not just them, using you for cheap labor. That's not what an internship is or should be. And if that's how your company is using you, then that there's a problem there. Because it is a learning experience. It is also a job though, so you have to put in the same effort you would for a job. I just want to add, I think we had a lot of good information, so I don't want to dwell too much on it. But I believe, Justin, your question was, how do I show this to the employer, right? That was your main concern. It's like my GPA is not great. I have these other things. How do I show that to the employer? That was your question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like a lot of this information is really good, but it's a lot of stuff that I feel isn't really pertaining to this information. I think it's good that it was said, but like for
mhm,
example, not knowing a skill is like that you put on your resume. Like yes, you should not like put down a skill that you don't know. But this is not central to the question of how do I show skills to the employer, because that's a problem that happens after you've already been hired, right?
mhm,
So I think I just
yeah,
want to highlight the things that people have said that are the most pertaining to this question. So like when Erasmus said make a portfolio website, I think that was a great idea. When Alice said that cover letter is very important, then absolutely yes. I think a lot of engineers struggle with writing skills, and as a person who is good with writing skills, like my writing skills are pretty good, I've been able to leverage that in my favor. And I think if you have good writing skills, Justin, or if you can develop them, then that can really help you. When Sarah was talking about anything that has like a personalized portion on the application, or if you can talk to them in person, like during the interviews that Eric had, then you can absolutely communicate that, because at that point, remember, you are not your resume, but your resume is the first step that they see. And in any way you can circumvent that first step, that first hurdle in the interview process, and you can get to show them who you are, either through that personalized box. Well, the camera is flipped, so I think this is how I should be pointing to Sarah, or getting that that interview any way you can at job fairs or through phone calls, any way that you can circumvent the first hurdle. Because remember, the interview process is not just one step, right? There's there's your resume that they look at. HR's companies often filter through. There's the actual interviewing process where you're talking to them, and then
Well,
there's like final deliberations, right? So you
there's
need to make
different
sure.
stages in the interview process as well. There's like
Yeah, and there's
the behavioral interview, which is usually your first one. It's like how do you act around people. They'll ask you the usual question. Tell me a bit about yourself, which is you. I would recommend preparing like a little script for that because it's always an awkward question when they go for that. I'd
absolutely
say
there's
that's one.
there are extra steps inside the interview process. I'm just saying, I'm speaking broadly in that
Mm.
first step is often the resume. And my advice to you is, anyway, again, you can circumvent that first part through connections, through intern fairs, through finding people to talk to personally, through communicating outside your resume, like Erasmus said, the portfolio. These are all great ways to communicate your worth and your value to the employer that extends beyond the resume. And even
also certifications.
like and certifications. What people were saying about all those learning all those skills and stuff. That's great. That's awesome. You should. And I feel like Justin, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like you know these things. So like I think Justin, you have a lot of skills. So like communicating on that resume on the resume itself also important. If you can work on that. I believe next semester we're working on having a resume workshop. And you can always, for anyone watching this or listening to this, in our Discord, we do have a channel that where you can talk about your resume and work with people here improving that or looking for people to edit that or get a second opinion on it. So just in general, like just to sum it up, because we have been on this one question a lot. Justin, my advice to you is find ways to communicate your value beyond the resume. Cover letters, portfolio, interviews in person, or interviews, that sort of thing.
And I'll just say, like, a lot of this information I have learned over the years, that starting from when I first got to UTD, I went to every single career fair, every single internship fair, and I always worked on trying to, you know, talk to different people. Eventually, I caught on and realized, oh, I need a LinkedIn. Got a LinkedIn, and like just with each and every attempt at trying to secure the bag, get a position, whatever, right? With every denial, I just slowly started to adopt this mindset like, oh, I'm not qualified enough. Maybe the skills or whatever these people are looking for will come a little bit later. But, if I'm being honest with myself, I just need to do it more. I just need to apply more.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
and I just want to
hearing you-
say,
yeah.
for
Hearing your
anyone
story-
listening, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, hearing your stories inspires me to do more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that, Justin. And to anyone listening, and to you, Justin, as well, remember that you do have value and you have worth and you are qualified. The path to getting an engineering degree is arduous. The path to getting any degree is arduous, as I'm sure Alice can say that. I'm sure that it wasn't a cakewalk over in pre-med world, right? And you have value beyond your resume, and don't feel discouraged if companies have been rejecting you. That's just part of the process. Most people don't get an internship the moment they walk in the door on freshman year, right? And it's to say that you are not qualified because you have not been privileged to have that experience is, I think, a disservice to you. So just hang in there and remember that there are also a lot of other factors and it's not just you as a person. There's other factors that might have been in play that you did not get that internship. I mean, we're in the middle of COVID right now, right? So remember, there's like just less work. I know I dropped out of my internship after the summer, not because they were dissatisfied with my performance, but just because there's less work to do in the COVID era. So just to remember that, and you have value and you have worth beyond your resume, and just find ways to communicate that, because I think if you can do that, employers will see that you're worth it.
Also,
Thank you.
I know we talked about like building a portfolio on technical skills, but you can always learn that even through class or like through your internship. They can always teach you a new program. They can always teach you a new skill. I think if you are struggling, you might want to start working on softer skills, like Martin mentioned, writing, talking, networking, um, like the softer skills that take time to learn, time management, that type of stuff. It's really hard to teach people. So if you can start learning that and start showing that you have those skills, they'll be more inclined to look over your inexperience for if you have part if you have a good set of soft skills, a good foundation to stand on. Because it's just a lot easier to learn how to CAD than it is to learn how to talk to people, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Alice. These are great points. You are competing with other engineers, and other engineers do have these technical skills. So highlighting those soft skills, like people say, it's like, oh, everyone puts like leadership and time management on their resumes. Like, yes, but it is important to actually have those and find ways to turn those into concrete and quantifiable things that you can put on your resume. So, for example, you said you've worked part-time jobs, right, Justin?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's like find ways in your description of that part-time job to show that like you had that work ethic or that willingness to learn or had to speak to customers or whatever it is. It's find ways to distill that into that sentence that goes underneath your work experience. For example, on my resume, it's worked at Papado's restaurant a year and a half. Job description describing what I did. I emphasized that I had to juggle like 4 or 5 aspects of the job that were always happening simultaneously. That's a quantifiable way of showing that you have time management skills, right? So it's not just on your skills list you have time management. It's while I was working at this job, I had 3 different responsibilities, and they all were happening simultaneously in parallel, and I had to do them all at the same time. And I always did that, and my manager was always satisfied. And in fact, my work exceeded their expectations every time. That's a way to turn a soft skill into, in a sense, a hard number, right? And that can, I think, if you can find a way to communicate that, that can appeal a lot to employers.
Yep.
Also, if you are working a lot of jobs, like having a rough estimate of how many hours you worked a week and how along with how many hours you took in school helps you it'll better quantify the amount of actual work you had going on, because just every part-time job is different, so the more specific you make it, the more helpful it is to the employer to see, to help paint a better picture of what you were going through.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I did have that on my resume at one point, and I've done my resume hundreds of times. It's on different platforms, on my desktop, on Google Drive, on Dropbox, on the drive at the school. There's so many different versions of it. But I remember it was probably last year at one of the resume workshops that I went to. The lady told me, "Oh, get rid of that." I had put how many hours I would work on average a week. She's like, "Yeah, they don't really care about that." I was like, "Oh, well, that sucks, because that's pretty much everything for me. That's half of everything for me."
Yeah, I will say that advice often varies because there is no hard and fast rule for like resumes. There's a lot of rules that we all accept, but things will vary between different people telling you different things. And remember, these people all come from different places, right? So like maybe in whatever jobs that they've worked at, like that was not relevant to them. And maybe for you it is. And I would just say take that advice in stride and just remember it's like, hey, I can take this advice. It doesn't mean that you have to follow it, right? Like if you want to put that 40 hours, then like yeah, go ahead. And remember, listen to a lot of different opinions. No one person is perfect at building resumes, right? So like if you want, I could look at your resume and I could tell you some things, but don't listen to everything I have to say and take my word as like, the only advice that's out there. I'm not word of God on this sort of stuff, right? So
It's definitely finding a mix of things on there. I get my resume reviewed at every single possible career center event, every single career fair. If I had the time, I would go and get it reviewed. I probably had like 20.
Oop, and there she goes.
Yeah,
I'm
speaking
just
of
gonna
me,
very quickly point something
go ahead.
out.
Yeah.
Jesus Science
My
from
bad.
our comments has said another good way to show what you're doing is by going to national conventions, and he's given us a couple of examples. But yeah, there's several national conventions like the SolidWorks or Shippy or ASME. There's different stuff that you guys can go to that always just adds a little bit of flavor to your resume. But
Yeah,
cool.
and Alice was talking about the soft skills and highlighting them in your work experience. If you put academic projects on your resume, highlight them in there. I have one I took an innovation entrepreneurship class, and so in there I talked about what the group project did, but then my individual responsibilities, and I talked about how I was the one who managed a timeline of events for the group, as well as creating and presenting a presentation to the class, and that's where the time management comes in, but also management of a team schedule, and then also the ability to create and present to a group of people. That hits some major soft skills that companies are looking for when they're hiring for you. So having just descriptors like that are super helpful.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for sharing
Yeah.
all of that. I will apply to 2 places today.
Nice.
Go. Yeah, it's a career fairs.
Amazing.
Ever since freshman year, I think I went to every single one that UTD hosted.
Yeah,
So
career fairs are
I
awesome.
definitely feel the same way that you felt. Every time I went, I was like, okay. I mean, sure, I was a measly freshman at the time, right? But at the same time, like I went to a community college before that as a high school, and I came in with like an associate's degree. I automatically assumed like, okay, these guys are surely will give me something, right? But no, that wasn't the case at all.
You just
Yeah,
kind
in
of feel
fact,
dejected after a while, not hearing back for like years on end.
yeah, sometimes you
Just
won't hear
keep on
anything.
getting the rejection emails.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay.
See,
I get those a lot.
a lot of the time it's like you don't hear back. I'm a person where I'm like, just tell me that I was rejected. That way I know and I'm never just wondering. And I used to have, when I was applying for jobs, like working in high school, I would save some of my like rejection emails and I would look back on them. I don't have them anymore. I have a different email address than that. But I would look at them and I would be like, those are all the people who missed out on having me as an employee. Not me missing out on their job opportunity. No, they missed out on having me as an employee because I'm great and I can do the job they wanted. They just couldn't see it.
Yep. Another good thing to say is confidence. Just having a good grasp on who you are, what your worth is, and just the confidence to not bend down against the pressure of getting rejected constantly shows in your person. So just being sturdy enough for that kind of stuff will eventually get you into a position.
That too, and also the ability to, if a company calls you and lets you know you're rejected, the ability to calmly say something along the lines of,
Thank you.
thank you for this opportunity. I hope you will keep a hold of my resume and consider me for a future position, or just being able to take the rejection in stride. Like, obviously, if it was your dream job and they call you and they tell you that they rejected you, it's going to be heartbreaking. But on that call, you have to accept it with dignity and grace, and then you can hang up and then you can bawl your eyes out. That's totally fine. But a company might, you might get rejected, but somebody else you were looking into, I don't know, companies talk to each other. They might find out that you also talked to this company and company A rejected you. Well, company B might be like, well, how did they handle that? Or if you apply for one position and they reject you for that, and you later on apply for a different position, there's probably going to be some kind of note on how did you handle being rejected from the first one in the first place. Because if you go slander the company online, they're never going to possibly hire you.
No.
So it's confidence and then just taking everything with
Grace.
in stride and with dignity and grace. Yeah.
Yeah. I think just to wrap that up, it's like that. There's like this semi-famous tweet where someone was complaining in a not polite and professional manner about Stanford admissions, and then Stanford admissions replied to their tweet, and then they were like, no, take it back, please. So yeah, just keep that in mind. But yeah, I think hopefully this has been of help to you, Justin. I know you said like you're gonna be applying to places. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to point out we are coming up in an hour and a half.
Yep.
Do we have any other questions you want to say tonight, or should we be wrapping this up?
Yeah. So the last topic
I have
we're.
one more thing I
Oh,
want to add
yes. Quickly.
for this topic.
Okay.
So I think Sarah mentioned if they don't reply to you, like if they just leave you hanging. Sometimes that doesn't mean they rejected you. Sometimes it just means that they're taking a very long time processing through. I'm currently I applied for an internship. I got an interview. I did a second interview, and then now I'm waiting for another interview. But that was like 2 to 3 months ago. So I thought they rejected me, but I sent a follow-up email just in case. But it turns out they were just going through a lot of
Applications.
They just had a lot of
It's
applications.
yes,
and a lot
it's
of other
definitely
things
good to follow up as well. But if they don't respond to your follow up email after a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
maybe
then-
move on
yeah.
and try to apply elsewhere.
All
Oh,
right.
man.
Yeah.
And the
Absolutely. I think that hadn't been said before, but like also it's like I think spent over half an hour on this question.
it
Yeah,
was more
well,
than half an hour.
No.
I think this was
More than
the
half an
hour.
So
Uh,
we might wanna.
Moving on
think
to
it's
the last
interesting for
topic we're
people.
going to be talking about. So we talked about how to get jobs. Now we're going to talk about very quickly what jobs are out there. What industries are you guys interested in, and what kind of things should someone be looking into to kind of know what industry they want to go into? All right. So,
I will. Do you mind if I actually start real quick? Because I
yeah,
have a very interesting perspective on this.
yes.
Lord.
So I got into mechanical engineering because when I was a small kid, I very much enjoyed having all the pieces come to a whole. So I did your whole Lego sets and all of that. That's why I chose to do mechanical engineering. It was the most kind of like engineering that would open up opportunities for me to do a vast amount of things. And it also gave me the opportunity to be able to change what I end up working in. So over the years and from my background, I have a very athletically based background. So I get a lot of opportunities in the sports world. Well, engineering and sports don't go super duper hand in hand very closely. Would I love a engineering related job in the sports field? Yes. But because I wasn't a kid who was like, I have to work in the automotive industry once I graduate. When I chose my degree of mechanical engineering, I had all the opportunities laid out in front of me on what to do. So for me, it's a matter of what do I not want to do, and then what kind of job do I want to see on the day to day basis. So obviously, the what jobs you don't want to do depends on each person.
Mhm.
And then the what my day to day looks like, what I want, and what kind of job position I'm looking for can apply to many different fields.
Mhm.
And so, myself personally, I'm very interested in like leadership and development or management trainee positions at a vast variety of companies. I've talked to a railway company about it. Chick-fil-A actually has a leadership and development program for the corporate side. It's more of a business themed one, but stuff like that. So I personally look for a position that sounds interesting to me with a job description that sounds interesting to me. So I'm not an industry driven person. I'm more of a position driven person.
Yeah. So, one thing that is important to say in this is your first job will determine, or in a lot of cases, this is one thing that I've kind of seen as I've read through like engineering forums and stuff like that. One of the things that you have to take in consideration when choosing your first job is your first job will, in a very technical sense, determine what industry you're part of. Because let's just say you had a 3-year job in an automotive company and you were really well experienced in automotive things, specifically, let's just say the transmission of power or something like that. You can't expect to go like, all right, transmission of power, now moving to, let's just say, well, the energy company
Transfer.
might be
Right.
appropriate for transmission of power, but we'll just say that you try going into the distribution of electrical engineering and whatever. So trying to get a job there will be a lot harder because you have to start from scratch basically, because a lot of the automotive stuff doesn't transfer over to the electrical distribution stuff. So choosing your first job, like your first job, not just internships, is very important. Use internships as a way to kind of gauge yourself. Okay, I've worked in the food industry, I've worked in the automotive, aerospace, electrical distribution. There's a lot of things. And as a mechanical engineer, one of the most beneficial things for us is also our greatest weakness, which is we are kind of built as engineers to be the most diverse engineering discipline. So we, as mechanical engineers, we are suitable in about every industry. Sports, well, you got to know the materials that football players use to crash into other football players, and having all that shock absorption and vibrations and all. There's a lot of mechanical aspects to absolutely every field. Computer science is another one that's starting to be applied in every field. So just using these kinds of things is important. But choosing an industry can also set yourself up and what you're going to be doing for the rest of your engineering career. So, what are you guys' thoughts on that? Um,
I agree. In terms of choosing your industry, as what Sarah says, knowing what you want to do and what you don't want to do is important, but you also should look at the industry themselves, especially now since COVID happened. A lot of industries are being heavily impacted, and some of them won't recover for years to come.
Yeah.
I was talking to an aerospace engineer earlier in the month, and she said that aerospace, it's going to be very hard to find a job just because, well, flights are down because COVID. That means the need to maintain, create, design, whatever planes, they're all down. So that means engineering jobs is similarly down. And it's not going to recover for another 7 years or so.
Yep.
So if you're going to aerospace or an industry that's similarly heavily impacted by COVID, you need to be really aware that there are very few jobs out there.
Yep.
On the other hand, the person I was talking to, they said automobile and like green industries are really good because everyone still needs cars, and there's a big trend of going green and like reducing carbon emissions. So being aware of general trends, not just in engineering but in just the general world, is really helpful. Would be really helpful to find a career path. I also heard that biomedical fields. It's a field that I'm personally interested in, but I heard that it was very hard to get a job in there, just because there's just not that much demand,
Mhm.
and
there's such a concentration of people trying to find jobs there too.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
And what
that-
you were saying,
Oh.
like the person you were talking to about the aerospace industry is fully right. It's obviously, of course, there's different sides of like aerospace. Like there's, you know, airplanes, and then also like the side of aerospace being like rocketry. Rocketry's kind of going up,
Missiles, yeah.
just
In
because people
SpaceX.
are. Yeah, and just because like that's something people are interested in, but just the general like creating of planes for commercial use, like obviously Boeing has kind of fallen over the past handful of years, but like companies like Boeing, they're not going to recover. But I have a friend who does aerospace-ish related stuff with a company who works closely with the military. That side is actually like going up. They're always trying to improve what they have, just because it is such like a booming industry. So it's looking at the whole trend, but also looking at like the niche sides of it, because aerospace in general is kind of declining with the availability of jobs, but rocketry jobs are going like sort of going up. Obviously, nobody's super going up right now, but yeah. So look at the general trends, but also look at like the niche little things.
Yeah.
Maybe like drones, designing
Yeah.
drones and
Mhm.
stuff.
Yep.
Sure those
And
would be
another,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
another. Oh,
I
sorry.
have
Go on.
I have a couple things I just want to make sure I say before I forget them. So with what Erasmus was saying, I agree. Your first job sets a trend on the rest of your career in many ways. Not just the field, but like for example, your salary is often like your first job is kind of like sometimes a starting point because your next job might look at that. So your first job is pretty important. Different job. But remember, the longer you wait to pivot, if you're going to pivot, the harder it gets. If you're in the automotive industry for a year and then you decide you want to move to HVAC, not too much of an issue. If you're in the automotive industry for 15 years and then you decide to move to HVAC, now we have a bit of a problem. So then moving on to what Alice has been saying, where she was, oh man, my brain is already frying. Okay, what was she saying? Alice was talking about
Trends and
Biomedical.
industries.
yes, the trends, absolutely. Just do remember though, if aerospace is like your dream, yeah, sure, aerospace isn't going to be around isn't going to be as hot for 7 years, and maybe you need to feed yourself and you need to pay your loans, right? But also, it's like if you want to be an aerospace engineer, you should not be discouraged. And like maybe you can't get a job in aerospace, try to find an adjacent industry so it's easier to pivot into aerospace afterwards. Because remember, your engineering career is not going to be the next 7 years. It's going to be the next 30 years, maybe 40 years, like just until you
The rest of your
retire,
life.
possibly. So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind. The next few years, very important, but also as important the rest of your life, because you're gonna have to live it.
Mhm.
And then finally, what Sarah was saying with those niche industries, absolutely. Look for those things that you can, if you can narrow in and find a place where you're welcome, that's awesome. Just do keep in mind, like you were saying about biomedical, Alice, I think, is that oftentimes with a niche industry, there might be lots of applicants and very few jobs. Like, for example, with SpaceX, right? Like, there are more, I think, rocketry programs and companies now than there have been for a long time. But there's still not that many. And the interest, I think, is outpacing the jobs that are available. Like, imagine all of the people who are really in SpaceX. Well, I mean, they can only hire so many people. They're only one company, so you have this big funnel, right? And that funnel gets a little better when you have like Virgin and then like anything that works with the military contractors. But it's still like relatively speaking, like here's all the people and then here's the company. So just keep in mind niche companies and niche applications. Sometimes that's an issue.
Yeah, and adding on to what Martin was saying, like lots of people look at SpaceX and they're like, oh, that's where all the rocketry is, so that's where it funnels. But we also got to remember, SpaceX doesn't manufacture everything. There's also the manufacturing side of rocketry. We also have the logistical side, someone that's reading all the data for SpaceX. SpaceX uses a ton of companies. So if your goal is SpaceX, got to understand it's super hard to get into, super competitive, but maybe work with other companies that SpaceX works, because maybe you'll find that more interesting. So it's kind of looking at, okay, what do I want to do, where, and why? Because that kind of stuff will help you a lot more than just choosing a company. I feel like choosing a company as a goal is not as good as choosing a job that you want to work, or choosing an industry that you want to work. So I feel like those two,
Absolutely.
yeah, those two are the biggest goals. And kind of touching base on the topic of niche things, something you got to consider is socioeconomics. So as engineers, society impacts what we do 100 times over, because someone has to pay for our big projects, and everyone's going to be affected by them. Let's just say civil engineers. If you need to build a bridge, well, we're going to expect a ton of people to be using this bridge, not just a niche amount of people. If it's into a city, everyone's going to be using that bridge to access that city. So it's kind of using that idea, and also understanding, well, with the air, with the with like planes and stuff like that. One of the biggest issues that's arising is we're not getting enough people interested in becoming pilots, because pilots, at least the job is not as luxurious as it was in the 50s, where it was awesome to be a pilot and you were a movie star in a sense. Now it's just you're a pilot, right? You just do a job and you don't get to see your family
Um,
for most of the year. And this is a real problem,
Oh, my
because like,
friend's dad is a pilot and he loves his life.
oh yeah. I mean, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. There is people that are interested in being pilots, but I had a pilot. I had like an aerospace thing in high school, and when we went to like learn how to fly planes, we really didn't learn how to fly planes. It was just like a week of like be a co-pilot while a pilot actually pilots the plane. One of the biggest things that they were telling us is like, hey, you guys want a pilot's license because we're not getting enough of them. Yep, commercial businesses needs more pilots and stuff
um,
like that. So
I will say, just to because remember, like we're running up on time, so
yeah.
let's sum this up. I have an uncle who's a pilot, and I think big issue with pilots is it's a little off topic, but let's just nip this topic in the bud.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time and effort and money to become a pilot,
Hmm.
and I think personally that's the biggest issue why there are not a lot of pilots. Just want
Yeah.
to put that out there. And I think just want to remind us that we're trying to
Yeah.
wrap up this
And
last topic.
this is why I'm kind of talking about it. So to make planes, you need pilots to fly them, because then there is no one to control the plane unless we build AI to just do it, which is ethical or whatever.
That's a
That's
different topic.
that's in this engineering field of software engineers. So um so just knowing these like problem, like if you're interested in aeronautics, you should know about these things because that is important for your industry. So if you want to develop yourself into an industry, learn everything about it. Because that also helps you in your resume when you could say, hey, I know about the issues about pilots, and I know about this, and I know about this. The more you can talk about your industry with a company that you want to work for, the more they're going to look at you and be like, hey, this kid knows what they're talking about. So we might hire them. So that's my
And
piece in that. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
If
One
you're
Yeah.
last
looking to
thing.
just make money, if you're looking to just make money, go into a military complex. They'll welcome you with a fat check and a lot of
Benefits. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alice, you were saying something?
One last thing. It was more relevant to whatever we said back a couple minutes past.
Mhm.
But if you have the passion, you should definitely go into a field, even if like the trends say it's not. If you have the passion, your passion will like push yourself through. Hopefully.
Yeah,
If you're
yeah.
like me and a lot of other people and you're kind of undecided, avoid the high competition areas or like low market areas like aerospace. I'm not against aerospace, but I don't have a strong interest, so I'm probably just gonna avoid it because working for SpaceX sounds cool, but I don't really have the motivation to really drive to get that job. So
Absolutely.
it's just about perspective and
Mhm.
what's best for you.
And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, that segs pretty well into. I think I want to close off this topic real quick by highlighting something that Erasmus said and that Alice you brought up again is that picking a company or a specific industry just because it sounds cool, and like maybe you have a passion for it, maybe you don't, but like that, it might not be the best way to go forward. I think what Erasmus said about finding the aspect of engineering that appeals to you, right? So Erasmus loves the logistical side. I don't like logistics. If I'm looking for a job, oftentimes like I might not want a logistical position in any company that I want, regardless of industry. And remember, that's what you're actually going to be doing in the day to day. A lot of jobs in the engineering world, though in different industries, they might share a common aspect that motivates you. I like creative projects personally. If I, the product, if what I'm, if my job, if what I'm doing in my job is not creative, I'm not as interested in it.
Mhm.
So to me, I'm not actually interested in a specific industry. I'm interested in a design position, something where I can apply something creatively. When I did my internship in an HVAC company, I didn't know anything about HVAC. I didn't particularly care about HVAC, but just the fact that I was able to use critical thinking and creative skills when, for example, laying out the ductwork plans for a building, even though I don't really care about ductwork, that in itself brought me an understanding and a fulfillment for that job. So I think my big advice for when you're looking for that aspect or that industry that you're looking for in the engineering field, what you want to work for, I think looking into what motivates you as an engineer. Is it logistics? Is it design? Is it manufacturing? Look for this stuff, I think. And then that way, just keep yourself open to industries and instead focus on the type of job you want. Not just the industry, but the type of job, because that's what you're going to be doing in your day to day.
So just to kind of build off of that is rank number one thing. It should be the type of job you want and the level of engineering that you want. So there's like design, manufacturing, logistical. There's many levels, and you kind of learn them in classes as you go on. Second level is choosing an industry that draws your attention. It's not as important as choosing a job that will make you feel fulfilled, but it is still very important because if I want to work with cars, maybe working with planes isn't going to be as fun for me. It probably will be, but and the third would be choosing specific companies, and this one should really not be considered. Like even small companies have big problems, and these small companies can help you in the future build up to larger companies, but just ignoring them is not a good idea. So
Yeah, I want to say like that rank one choice up here, that rank two choice right here, that rank three choice is down here.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, you should like want to work. Like if you're out there doing your job search, you're selecting companies to apply for. But just assuming like I'm gonna work for this company, and if I don't work for this company, then I don't want to be an engineer. That's a bad position,
That's
right?
bad.
Keep in mind like you're selecting companies to work for. Yes, but don't get too hung up on a specific company, like
Mhm.
type of job or level of job, industry, specific company. No, like just
before the
remain
company-
open.
And before the company, you also got to consider benefits. Let's not lie.
Benefits, yes.
We
You
gotta
should be
get paid.
properly compensated.
Yeah.
Dress
Uh,
code, you know. I don't want to show up wearing a monkey suit every day.
Yep.
I like my monkey suit.
Oh,
Feel
no,
good.
no.
Not every day, but
yeah,
like
exactly.
I'm messing up this podcast, I feel nice. I haven't
Yeah.
had the opportunity to wear a suit in
Exactly.
a year, guys, so this feels pretty snazzy.
I should have probably dressed up. For the next one, I will.
I hate dressing up. It's so much work.
So, does anyone have any
You
last?
guys do have it lucky. It's you put a jacket on and you're dressed up, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, for sure.
We'll talk
I'm
about dress
privileged
code in the
that
next
sense.
one. I'm just kidding.
Of course.
Are we? But
No,
are we
no,
though?
no. No.
All right, it's
We'll see.
9:30, guys.
Drop
Yep.
by our next episode and see if we actually do.
Yes. So does anyone have any last regards? Anything real quick?
I said what I said.
All right, cool.
Nah, I think we got it all out there.
All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Mech Talk, if that's what we're calling it.
Part two.
We will keep you guys
Editor.
posted.
Play the music now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Outro.
Editor. S-
We're taking editor application.
Editor applications is a thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So,